Wisdom is learning all we can, but having the humility to realize that we don't know it all. That's why it's so fundamental to integrity in the moment that we ask with intent. 2. Listen without excuse. When we hear the first whispering of conscience, we do one of two things. We either act in harmony with it, or we immediately begin to rationalize, tell ourselves rational lies as to why we should make some other choice. If we choose the first option, we feel peaceful. We create greater alignment with true north. We grow in our ability to recognize that inner voice and in our personal effectiveness. If we choose the second option, we feel disharmony and tension. We begin to justify our decision, often on the basis of external factors, such as other people or circumstance. We typically begin blaming and accusing others. They may sense our incongruence and respond in kind, creating a negative synergy called collusion, where we're each acting in ways that invoke in others the very negative behavior that becomes the excuse for our own. Suppose, for example, that you come home, tired after a hard day's work. You're ready to relax, and you're looking forward to spending a quiet evening watching a video you rented on the way home. But at dinner, you sense that your teenage son is having some kind of inner struggle, and you feel a little twinge inside telling you that the best use of your time is to rearrange your plans and create some quality together time tonight. Bottom line, you don't want to do it. You don't consciously admit that to yourself. You really love your son. You want the best for him, but you're so tired. And you've been looking forward to this video and time to relax. After all, you deserve it. You've been working all day to put food on the table for him. You've spent 10 hours commuting, dealing with inter-office rivalry and politics, grappling with tough issues and intense interpersonal challenges, slaving over budgets and reports, laboring with irate customers and frustrated suppliers, all so that he could have some of the finer things in life. And all you want is 2 hours to yourself, just 2 hours to watch the video you've put off seeing for months because you were so busy. So you go for a quick fix at the dinner table. Hey, you doing all right? He looks up to see if you're serious. You're not. Yeah, I'm okay. So, school okay? Homework? Dates? Yeah, everything's fine. You're working hard on your grades? Scholarship's important, you know. Yeah, I know. He gets up from the table and grabs his sweater from the back of the chair. Going out? Yeah. Where? Just around. When'll you be back? Later. You've got school tomorrow. Be home by 10:30, okay? Okay. As he's on his way out the door, you call after him. Hey, you know if you've got a problem, I'm here for you. Yeah, I know. So, you want to talk? Nah, I gotta go. You ever gonna talk anymore? All I ever get's one-word answers. It's impossible to communicate with you. Yeah, he mutters under his breath, you're not so easy to get along with yourself. You'd think teenagers could open their mouths and say something intelligent just once in a while. As the screen door slams behind him, you make your way to the easy chair, muttering about teenagers and lack of communication and how hard it is to be a parent these days. You tried. He's just a closed-mouthed zombie. He resists any effort to communicate. Well, teenagers are weird anyway, right? So, validated in your own mind, you settle down to start your video. And within a few minutes, the lingering discomfort inside you is temporarily drowned out by the VCR. Meanwhile, your son is struggling even more. He's feeling blamed and accused for the failure to communicate. His problems are compounded. He feels worse than ever, and he has no one to talk to about it. Over time, the cost of withdrawals such as this is enormous. Brick by brick, walls of justification and rationalization begin to surround your heart. Your son builds walls around his own heart to protect his tender feelings and deep needs. Communication becomes superficial, strained, quickly escalating to blaming and accusing in the effort to validate behavior. You live in a complex web of discomfort and pain created by the consequences of not listening and acting in harmony with that first whisper of conscience. We exhaust ourselves far more from the tension and the consequences of internal disharmony, not doing what we feel we should, than from hard, unremitting work. And when we seek to escape the tension by filling our lives with quadrant 3 activities we've tried to convince ourselves are important, or by running to quadrant 4, we only increase the tension. In fact, many of what we call time management frustrations, feeling hassled, pressured, caught in dilemmas, are at the core inner dissonance. Even in the tension of the moment, it seems so much easier to live with the questions than with the answers. As long as we have questions, as long as we're in doubt, as long as we're struggling, we're not responsible to do anything. We're not accountable for results. So we spend days, weeks, months, years wallowing in the mass of rational lies we've created to avoid the simple actions that would put us in harmony with the laws that govern quality of life. The key to acting with integrity is to simply stop playing the game. Learn to listen, as well as to conscience, to our own response. The instant we feel ourselves saying, yes, but, change it to yes, and. No rationalizing, no justifying, just do it. Look at every expression of conscience as an invitation to create greater alignment with the fundamental laws of life. Then, listen, respond, listen, respond. 3. Act with courage. It's easy to think of courage in connection with very dramatic, extraordinary events, like carrying a message through enemy lines, living with a terminal illness, or running into a burning house to save a child. But some of the greatest acts of courage are in that instant between stimulus and response in our everyday decisions in life. It takes tremendous courage to be a transition person, to stop transmitting negative intergenerational tendencies such as abuse, and to choose to act based on principles of human dignity and respect. It takes courage to be self-honest, to examine your deepest motives, and to let go of the excuses and rationalizations that keep you from living true to your best self. It takes courage to live a principle-centered life, knowing that the choices you make may not be popular or understood by others. It takes courage to realize that you are greater than your moods, greater than your thoughts, and that you can control your moods and thoughts. Rebecca. At one time, I made the decision to attend a week-long seminar. I had clear expectations around what I was going to accomplish, particularly regarding some personal Quadrant 2 goals I planned to work on between and after seminar sessions. But I ran into a conflict the very first day of the seminar when I was asked to coordinate some activities for the seminar participants during the event. At the deepest level, to contribute to the success of others at this conference by fulfilling that responsibility was in harmony with my values and principles. The more I thought about it, the more I realized it was something I felt I really should do. But I also felt very frustrated because I knew the experience would be so different from what I had planned and anticipated. I accepted the responsibility, but I found myself under a lot of pressure and anxiety, running from one thing to another, trying to meet everyone's needs, and feeling more than a little frustrated that I didn't have time to do the things I'd planned to do. In the midst of these negative feelings, I remember one particular moment when I stopped and said, "Wait a minute, I don't have to live with this frustration. I've made the choice to do what I really felt I ought to do, but that doesn't mean I have to suffer all this anxiety and tension. I can choose differently." I took a deep breath and decided to choose my own response to the situation. I made the determination to just let go of all the anxiety, the concern about extrinsic pressure, the worry about what wasn't getting done. In my mind, I kept saying the words, "I choose differently. I choose differently." As I stood there, I felt all the negative anxiety and frustration leave. In their place, I felt a quiet determination to face my challenges with courage, to do what I could about those things I felt I ought to do something about, and to mentally let go of the rest. This was not a one-time decision. I had to revisit it several times during the week as I began to feel the pressures and the anxiety creeping back. It was so easy to get sucked into it. But I just stopped each time and said, I choose differently. And the more I did it, the more empowered I felt. For a while, I almost thought it was presumptuous to call these little acts courageous. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it really does take courage to just do what we feel we ought to do in the moment of choice, and to let go of all the reasons, the rationalizations, the justifications, the if-only thinking that threatens to overpower the peace of that decision. In looking back, I know that if I had refused that assignment, I would have felt ill at ease and duplicitous all week. As it turned out, the experience was much more satisfying, more powerful, more renewing than I had ever thought it would be. That which we persist in doing becomes easier to do, said Emerson. Not that the nature of the thing has changed, but that our ability to do has increased. As we learn to ask with intent, listen without excuse, and act with courage, we build our ability to live a principle-centered life. Over time, listening to and living by conscience becomes the fundamental habit of the heart. Instead of living with rationalization, fear, guilt, or frustration, we live with the peaceful inner assurance that we're putting first things first on a day-by-day, moment-by-moment basis. Genuine guilt, not social scripted guilt, becomes our teacher, our friend. Like a homing device that signals when an airplane gets off course, it warns us when our lives are out of alignment with the true north principles that create quality of life. Mistakes also become our teachers. Life becomes an upward spiral of growth as we learn more and more of true north. Educating the heart is the critical complement to educating the mind. In the words of American educator John Sloan Dickey, "The end of education is to see men made whole, both in competence and in conscience. For to create the power of competence without creating a corresponding direction to guide the use of that power is bad education. Furthermore, competence will finally disintegrate apart from conscience." Educating the heart is the process of nurturing inner wisdom. It's learning how to use all four endowments synergistically to act with integrity in the moment of choice. The Quadrant 2 process helps nurture this inner wisdom in several important ways. One of the highest uses of the space between stimulus and response is creating a personal mission statement. This statement becomes the DNA for every other decision we make. Weekly organizing gives us the opportunity to connect the big picture to the reality of the moment with a perspective that keeps the importance focus in moments of choice. End of the week evaluation helps us see time as a cycle of learning and growth rather than as linear chronos measurement. It empowers us to learn from living, to increase the quality of the decisions we make. Sharpening the saw increases the quality of our decisions by providing renewal in all four human dimensions, as discussed below. The physical dimension. Studies repeatedly showed the powerful negative effects of fatigue and illness on effective decision-making. As Vince Lombardi said, fatigue makes us all cowards. When we're tired or ill, we often tend to be more reactive. In addition, the abuse of chemical substances, such as drugs and alcohol, can severely diminish the space between stimulus and response. Sharpening the saw physically, exercising, eating the right foods, getting adequate rest, avoiding harmful substances, having regular physical checkups, significantly increases the likelihood that we'll make good choices in decision moments. It also increases our options as good health becomes a resource from which we can do so much more. Our body is a fundamental stewardship. It's the instrument through which we work to fulfill all other stewardships and responsibilities. The mental dimension. Quality mental renewal gives us added knowledge and perspective in decision-making moments. Consider the value of something like Stephen's bicentennial review of 200 years of American success literature. The literature at the time of the review and for the previous 50 years was essentially a reflection of the personality ethic, the quick fix, superficial social image focus that portrayed success as a matter of personality and technique. That literature created an illusory paradigm of success that could never empower people to create long-term quality of life results. But transcending that limited paradigm, we can see that before the personality ethic literature were 150 years of literature based on the character ethic, which said that the most fundamental ingredients to success were such things as honesty, integrity, humility, fidelity, justice, patience, and courage. This character ethic literature echoed the wisdom of thousands of years in other civilizations that also acknowledge these true north principles of success. Interestingly, one of the often repeated themes of the time management literature is that time is life. Yet this literature is filled with techniques, and the idea of character is starkly missing. As we study civilizations throughout time, we see the consequences in the lives of individuals and societies that lived by these true north principles, and those that didn't. We're back to the video of the orange again. The close-up focus creates confusion, disorientation, but as we draw back, the normal lens empowers us to see things in perspective, and that perspective, that awareness of influences in our environment that pull us away from true north, makes a tremendous difference in the way we make moment-by-moment decisions about the way we spend our time. Do I go for the quick-fix solution so I can get more things done now, or do I take the time to invest in this relationship and accomplish more important things in the long run? Do I try to feed my social need with the cotton candy satisfaction of confessing my boss's weaknesses to other employees in the hall? Or do I nurture quality relationships by being loyal to those not present and talking over differences face to face? Do I automatically say yes when my boss asks me to work over the weekend? Or do I look for third alternative solutions that will meet her need and mine too? Do I push doggedly ahead and work on the independent project I had planned? Or do I recognize an opportunity to improve the quality of life for someone else and myself as well by helping solve a problem? Meaningful mental renewal empowers us to transcend the limited wisdom of our environment in decision moments and keeps our minds sharp and clear and well exercised for ready use. The spiritual dimension. Renewal in the spiritual dimension cultivates a sense of meaning and overriding purpose that powerfully impacts our daily decisions. One of the most essential elements of the wisdom literature is the idea that an individual's life is part of a greater whole. And whether people see this greater whole in terms of life after death, recurring cycles of life, or intergenerational legacy, this bigger picture orientation puts the challenges of daily living in a contextual framework of meaning. As psychologist David Myers points out in his book, The Pursuit of Happiness, study after study shows that those who have this bigger picture orientation in their lives are happier, more satisfied, contributing people. He points out that, contrary to popular belief, some form of religious faith or meaning of life convictions are characteristic of happy people, and that people involved in religious activity to the point of making financial contributions are by far the biggest contributors to other philanthropic endeavors. Religious consciousness, it seems, shapes a larger agenda than advancing one's own private little world. It cultivates the idea that my talents and wealth are unearned gifts of which I am a steward. But Myers also notes that many people surveyed in the United States who do not necessarily consider themselves religious, nevertheless spend considerable time searching for and contemplating the meaning of life. As people see the consequences of living with the illusion of a self-focused, consumer-oriented, materialistic chronos paradigm, many begin to look at their lives more closely and search for ways to contribute that will change the results. Renewing activities in the spiritual dimension, meditation, prayer, formal religious activity, altruistic service, studying the wisdom and sacred literature, memorizing and reviewing a personal mission statement, nurtured the big picture context and the contribution focus of True North. This renewal plays a vital role in the education of the heart. It's the basis for deciding what first things are. It gives us the passion and the power to subordinate the less important to the most important. It empowers us to transcend the powerful influences of urgency, expediency, and instant gratification in the moment of choice. The social dimension. As we move into Section 3, the synergy of interdependence, we'll take a closer look at the social dimension. But the vital connection we need to make at this point is how our relationship with ourselves affects our relationships with others, and how this can be important to our education of the heart. Rebecca. I remember an event years ago that brought me to a startling awareness of the effects of violating conscience. At the time, I was a would-be writer as well as a young mother, very busy with preschool-age children and struggling with some health problems and other concerns. I walked into a bookstore one day, and there on the bookshelf was a recently published book written by a woman I had known and had considered a good friend several years before. My feelings moved rapidly from surprise to disbelief. In the world could she have written a book? She had a busy public life as well as a home and family to take care of. Where did she get the time to do something like that? The longer I stared at the book, the more I found myself beginning to rationalize, to justify. She probably hires a babysitter to take care of the children. They must be rolling in money. They probably eat out every night so she doesn't have to fix dinner. And she has so much energy, she's probably never been sick a day in her life. There's no way she could have written that book if she had to handle the challenges I have. As my thoughts ran on, I began to think of other things I never had time for. Suddenly, every book on that shelf seemed to jump out and yell, "Why haven't you read me?" It wasn't long before I felt like a hopeless, incompetent, victimized, frustrated mess. I felt almost angry at my perfect friend and with the people and circumstances I thought were responsible for my own situation. I went out to the car and sat there for a few minutes, just thinking. The experience was shocking to me because my reaction seemed so out of character. I usually found deep joy in the successes and accomplishments of others. Somewhere deep inside, I knew my response was way out of proportion. I knew there had to be some underlying reason for the way I felt, so I decided to sort it all out. I tried to just let go of all the negative, blaming, angry reactions and look honestly into my own heart. I had one of those wonderful, painful flashes of light that suddenly let you see everything for what it is. I wasn't really angry with my friend. She simply had some things in her life that I didn't, some things I knew I needed to have. I was seeing her accomplishments as a mirror of my own weaknesses, and seeing myself in that mirror, I lashed out at the reflection. I knew she was a great mother. Mothering was a challenge for me, and I was seeing her tremendous patience and positive attitude as a foil to what I felt was my own incompetence. She managed her time to do meaningful and creative things outside the home. I knew I had a talent for writing too, but I simply had not been efficient enough in my other responsibilities to find the time to develop that talent. I was assuming financial ease on her part because I felt restricted by a weakness in money management. Some wrong decisions earlier in our marriage had put us in debt. I felt that bondage kept me from doing a lot of things I wanted to do in life. My friend was healthy, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was that I knew I ought to exercise on a regular basis, and I didn't do it. If I had been doing the things in my own life I knew I ought to be doing, I never would have had those feelings in the first place. My friend's success would have been the joy it should have been to me. I knew I couldn't snap my fingers and suddenly change all those things in my life, but at least I knew the root of the problem was the fact that I wasn't putting first things first in my own life, and that was something I could do something about. People seem not to see, said Emerson, that their opinion of the world is also a confession of character. One of the best ways to educate our heart is to look at our interaction with other people, because our relationships with others are fundamentally a reflection of our relationship with ourselves. When we don't listen to or live by our conscience, we tend to blame and accuse other people in an attempt to justify our own inner dissonance. If we don't have a sense of mission and principles to measure ourselves against, we benchmark against other people instead of our own potential. We're into comparative thinking and win-lose mentality. We become self-centered and autobiographical. We impose our motives on the actions of others. We see their strengths and weaknesses in terms of how they affect us. We empower their weaknesses to control us. When we have a family, a work group, an organization, a society that's into blaming and accusing each other's sins, we have a fairly good indication that people are not living in harmony with their own inner imperatives. For the most part, they're caught up in a rescue fantasy. The problem is out there, and somebody out there is going to come along and solve it. As it says in Proverbs, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." As we move into the material on the interdependent reality, the most important thing we can take with us is a vivid awareness of the impact of our own integrity on our interactions with others. The results of living by conscience. People who listen to and live by their conscience do not have the cotton-candy satisfaction of urgency addiction, pleasing other people, or getting their security from being incredibly busy every minute of the day. They do, however, experience deep fulfillment, even in the midst of difficulties and challenges, and they go to bed at night with the confidence that they've done the most important things they could have done that day. They experience a deep level of inner peace and quality of life. They do not waste time rationalizing, fighting themselves, blaming and accusing other people or extrinsic conditions for their own situation. They have an almost sacred sense of stewardship about their roles, a sense of being responsible to contribute to quality of life for others in meaningful ways. They're strong in hard moments. They have a high balance in their personal integrity account. The amazing thing is that with all the negative consequences of violating conscience, we sometimes make that choice. Recently, as I was getting into a cab in a major Canadian city, the bellman told the cab driver, "Dr. Covey wants to go to the airport." So the cab driver thought I was an MD, and he started telling me all about his medical problems. I tried to explain to him that I was not that kind of doctor, but his English was limited and he didn't understand me, so I just listened. The more he described his problems, the more convinced I became that the problems he was describing were basically a function of his lack of integrity. He was leading a life of duplicity, lying and cheating. His biggest worry was being caught by the police. It was affecting his health. I was sitting there in the back seat without a seatbelt, and he was talking about seeing double as he drove down the highway. Even as we pulled up to the airport, he said, and I'm paraphrasing his broken English, "I'm going to be looking for another fare, and I'm not going to follow their rules and wait for 2 hours. I know how to get those fares." Then his expression sobered. "But if the policemen find me, I will get in trouble. I will lose my license. What do you think, doctor?" Finally, I said to him, "Don't you think that the main source of all these tensions and pressures is that you're not being true to your conscience? You inwardly know what you should do." "But I can't make a living that way." "Where's your faith? Put your faith in the principles of integrity. You'll get peace of mind and wisdom will come to you." Something seemed to touch him profoundly. He became open and teachable. "Do you think it would?" "I absolutely know it would. But you've got to make the commitment in your heart. See yourself living by the fundamental laws of life that are basic to all civilizations. Don't cheat, don't lie, don't steal. Treat people with respect. Do you really think it would help?" "I know it would." In the end, he didn't want to take a tip. he just embraced me. I'm going to do that. I already feel better. People know it. In their deep inner lives, they know what they ought to be doing, and they know it would improve quality of life. The challenge is to develop the character and competence to listen to it and live by it, to act with integrity in the moment of choice. Quadrant 2 goals to cultivate integrity in the moment of choice. When you set your goals for the week, really pause and connect with conscience. Observe your own involvement in the process. Think about how it feels to connect when you're not in the pressure of the moment. Work to translate that experience into the decision moments of each day. Create a specific question to ask yourself in moments of choice. Review it at the beginning of the day and several times throughout the day so that it's constantly before you. Work toward building the habit of pausing to ask that question in the space between stimulus and response. At the beginning of each day, think about your personal integrity account. Jot down deposits and withdrawals as you interact with conscience during the day. Think about the three-part process. Ask with intent, listen without excuse, act with courage. Set a goal to go through the process each time you face a decision moment. Be aware of how you typically respond in moments of choice. Keep track of the times during the day that you pause and connect with conscience and the result. In at least one decision moment each day, stop and analyze the factors that are acting upon you, such as urgency, the priorities of others, fatigue, expectations, yours and others, and scripting. Write them down, then jot beside them some indication of their importance. Notice if you feel your response to these factors changing as you take time to become aware of and think about them.